A More Beautiful Life is a listener-supported show. You can learn more about the benefits you receive from your support, such as access to other courses, special access to tools, blogs, and skills through our Patreon channel, Patreon/A More Beautiful Life. Hello, you are listening to A More Beautiful Life podcast, recognizing, appreciating, and integrating earliest life experiences. My name is Kate White, and I created this podcast because of my passion for my work as a therapist and an educator in preventing and resolving earliest trauma. I believe that integrating our earliest experiences brings us closer to who we really are. On the show, I will be having discussions with others on the path who have explored healing our earliest experiences in life, or who, in my opinion, have found ways to live a more beautiful life. Today on the show, we have Ariel Giarretto. Ariel Giarretto is devoted to helping couples and individuals become more at ease in their bodies, as well as discovering what is their most authentic relationship to their gender, their sensuality, and their sexuality. She has been a body-oriented trauma therapist for many decades. On staff at the Esalen Institute through the 90s, she studied with some of the finest somatic teachers and sexuality Tantra experts. Trained in a wide variety of somatic therapies, she is primarily informed by Peter Levine's Somatic Experiencing, the beautiful heart-centered work that treats the physiology effects of the trauma, as well as connects people to their deepest core self. For 19 years, she has been full-time Somatic Experiencing teaching faculty, training and mentoring professionals all over the globe. She is trained as a bodyworker and is a certified somatic sex educator and sexological bodyworker. She has extensive training in pre- and perinatal psychology and attachment and developmental trauma, and volunteered for many years as a doula. She works with couples and individuals desiring sexual or intimacy enhancement, as well as those who have experienced infertility, traumatic births, and invasive medical procedures. She practices in Oakland, California, United States, and also travels all over the world, teaching what she loves. Please join us in listening to this wonderful interview with her, where she talks about her work, her life, and her love of sexuality and helping people feel their full embodiment. That's their birthright for being human. Today on the show, we have my friend Arielle, who's such a treat. I'm so looking forward to talking with you about your work and your life. So wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I'm always so touched to get invited. But yeah, there's so many ways that you and I cross over, and so that's really exciting for me personally. And a couple things I want to say is I have birds here, so a bird might land on my head, or you might see me turning my head really fast. So there's nothing I can do about them. They have free reign, three flying of the house. So if they get noisy, I'll take them to another room. But I just want to.
No, well, they're sensitive beings in the field. Maybe they'll come in and add their story as we talk. So I love birds. So I'm glad to have your birds be a part of our podcast today. And yeah, we do cross over a lot. You were one of my first somatic experiencing teachers so long ago now. And I really would love for people to know more about you, Arielle. If you want to just say a little bit, if people don't know you, how would you just say about your work and what you want people to know about you?
Okay. Well, actually, when I was in my 20s, I was, how many of us are activists in our late teens and early 20s. Mine was about women's health. And I wanted to, for some reason, I still don't really understand it personally, I should after all these years, is I wanted to make sure that women were able to have the birth experience that they wanted to. I was reading Suzanne Arms, and I was reading all about the farm, right? Spiritual midwife, just captive. So in my early 20s, I became a doula, and I was very passionate about it. And I realized from being a doula, which is a childbirth assistant, probably most of you know that, it gave me the initial skills that actually support me in the work that I do now. The life that I have, moving the camera forward, going from doula to trauma therapist and trauma teacher. I've been on the faculty of the Somatic Experiencing Institute for about 20 years now. It's been a while. And I realized that when I began to learn somatic experiencing, which is so much about helping people access not only their inherent health of their system, but who they are underneath all the layers of trauma that have been laid on them, and how do we help people get to the way that their bodies are designed to respond. And that's what I felt like I was doing as a doula, like helping women and their partners get underneath the fear and just let their body do what it was designed to do. And to me, that was the most exciting thing. And then, jump ahead about, again, 20 years, when I met Peter Levine in the 90s. I was on staff at the Esalen Institute. When I finished graduate school, I went the traditional psychotherapy route and got my license as a marriage and family therapist, and was really unhappy with it. Like when I graduated from getting this degree, I was so put off by the world of therapy. It just didn't excite me. It felt like the most boring thing in the world. So I went to Esalen to learn more about the body, because as my interest as a doula, I realized, wow, the body is everything. The body is the experiencer. The body is where the pleasure is. The body is where the magic happens. And it's the body that holds the trauma, right?
Yeah.
So getting exposed to the somatic world, not just at Esalen, and then really having it land in me when I met Peter Levine, and it was in 1999, I met Peter Levine. Before that, I'd been taking every imaginable somatic program that I could. And it's where a lot of my early sexuality training happened. I was doing Tantra and, lots of studying with experts in the sexuality field. And I got so impressed with Peter Levine in '99 that I trotted up to him and I said, I love what you're doing. I want to learn what you're doing. And he said, well, I'm leaving for Brazil in 10 days. Would you like to come? I've got a training going. And I said, sure. So within 10 days, I jumped on a plane and I went to Brazil for a month, where I was able, you can't do this anymore, I was able to do both the beginning and the intermediate training in a year, because he did these two trainings back to back. So a month later, I stumble out off a plane, having just immersed myself in this amazing, amazing world of somatic experiencing, and said, that's it, I am hooked. And just devoted myself to the deeper study of somatic experiencing, which to me it's a magical model.
Yeah, it's really understanding how the body works and what to do, how to recognize states, and working with trauma, working with experience. You've been on the faculty there, like you said, like for, I don't know, what did that happen soon after? Did you become faculty there soon after that?
What I did was I was lucky enough to be asked by Peter to be his kind of a personal assistant. He needed someone to kind of keep an eye on him when he was teaching in Europe. So for 3 years, I traveled with him and assisted all of his trainings. Back then he was teaching full time. So I did the beginning and the intermediate and the advanced probably 12 times with him. It was incredible. And I was doing sessions in every imaginable culture. I really started to learn about intergenerational trauma working in Germany, and with generations of war survivors, Holocaust survivors. It was an incredible education for me, of which I am eternally grateful that I got to do that. In 2004, I became teaching faculty. So it took me about 5 years to become faculty. So I've been doing full-time teaching faculty since 2004. And where you and I really connect on this is that what makes SE and a lot of the work that we do is that it's the lens of the nervous system. It's like, what is happening in the body when I'm affected by something, when I'm affected by a memory, when I'm affected by something in my current life. And that to me informs everything. For some reason, I don't know, you probably know that sometimes you get clients that cluster. After I started to work with somatic experiencing, I got a whole cluster of women who were having infertility struggles. And so by that time, I guess I'm jumping ahead, I had trained with Ray Castellino. And so I think it was around 2006, I actually met Ray through Peter. They had dinner together, and because I was assisting Peter at the time, I got to meet Ray. And I don't even know what year this was. I think it was 2000. And right after I met Ray, I immediately started to do some womb surrounds with him, which were absolutely life-changing. So I definitely launched into that as well and went through his whole 2-year and then assisted him quite a bit, not in the foundation trainings, but did a lot of co-facilitating with him in womb surrounds, which was an amazing thing. So I've got the pre and perinatal really deeply in my connect me back to being a doula. And then I have these women coming in with infertility. And was realizing, it was like shocking, how many of the women had no connection to their pelvises. They were either going through IVF or they were trying like crazy to get pregnant. And yet they didn't have connections to their wombs, to their pelvis, nor did they have connection to their sexuality, right? Many of these women were trauma survivors. And when I asked them, what is your relationship with your pelvis? What's your relationship to your genitals, to your womb? Yeah, they looked at me blankly like, well, that's not about having a baby, is it? That's not about getting pregnant. I mean, of course, we need the sperm and the egg, but you mean I need to connect, right? And the light bulbs went on. And so I started to develop this kind of protocol of working with women around finding pleasure in sexuality, finding their pelvises, imagining and dropping into the felt sense of their wombs as this fertile, beautiful, pink and yummy thing that is going to invite a little zygote into it, and they were flabbergasted. What are you talking about? And then encouraging them to make love with their partners before going through IVF, to have their partners love them up, kiss them up, stimulate their nipples. I hope it's okay to say that.
Yes, sure.
Let's get juicy here. And it was blowing their minds. That they weren't really connecting how essential the connection is about pregnancy. It become this medical model that they actually needed to invite this little being into their wombs, and they needed their wombs to be a welcoming place for them.
Yes, I agree. No, you're exactly right. It's an intentional space. And so creating that home there, that first home for them, and creating that space. So I'd love to hear more about that. I know that you went from all those years of being in SC, you started to develop your own work, and it has a specific name. So can you just tell people what you did? Because I've been tracking it and I want to take that workshop too, but I haven't had a chance yet. So tell people more.
So these experiences with working with infertility led me to realize I had to do something outside of the SE training that was specifically about finding pleasure in the body after trauma. And it was the women that found pleasure in their body that were able to conceive more regularly. They were feeling more connected to their partners, and they were healing their sexual trauma by just making more connection with their pelvises. So out of that beginnings with my infertility clients came what I call full embodiment. And in 2005, I realized that I wanted a lot more sexuality training, that when I talked about sexuality in the SE trainings, because there's so many sexual abuse survivors in the SE training, it would dissociate an entire room. They would go into shock. And the ripples of talking about sex, I realized I can't do it in the trainings. I mean, side note, isn't this terrible that you've got a room full of somatically trained practitioners who are supposed to help others, and you can't even mention vagina without them going into full-on shock, right? So I realized I needed to create a training outside of the SE training that specifically was about sexuality. And so my intention initially was to help the SE community have this added training. So in 2005, I was experimenting actually a lot with my own sexuality. I wasn't married. I was in what you would call a polyamory community, a very sex positive community. It was really fantastic for me. And I heard about this work called Sexological Bodywork. It actually came up in one of the SE trainings. There were a couple of people that had gone through Sexological Bodywork. So I Googled it, and I had a session, and the very first session that I had, and Sexological Bodywork, just to be very brief about it, touches every square centimeter of the body. No part is missed. Totally consensual. You set up agreements ahead of time. But the first time I had a Sexological Bodywork session, where this practitioner, everybody's a trained practitioner, where he went from the top of my body down. He did not avoid my breasts, and he did not avoid my genital area. I started to cry. And I realized all my life, these areas that have been avoided for very good reasons were suddenly welcomed. And I burst into tears on the table. And I felt like all of me was welcomed, all of me felt safe, all of me was alive, and I, wow, this is what the world is missing. So
Arielle, could I just pause a second, because I just want to feel that.
yeah,
I just really noticed my own aliveness while you were talking, and I just wanted to give people also a chance who are listening just to feel the possibility and their own aliveness at welcoming all of you, all the body, the brilliant body. Yeah. All right. So I haven't heard this part of your story, so keep going.
And it wasn't sexual. I mean, when we have certain parts of our bodies touched, it's either a medical procedure or it's our lovers, right? And this was not a lover. This was a neutral person. This was a trained person. And when he touched me, I felt like like I said, like all of me was welcomed, and there was nothing sexual about it. And so again, the light bulbs were going on that we can have connection with all parts of ourselves through sensation and not have to be sexual. And how do we separate that? Can I just enjoy the feeling of clothes on my nipples, the feeling of clothes on any part of me, and just from that sensation level and go, wow, this feels good. And it's not sexual. Now I might get aroused, but it's not, I don't have to do anything about it. I can just present with it.
Right, just enjoy the body sensation. And I think that we have such a love-hate relationship with the body. I mean, I also meet with women who have struggled with infertility, and also like their body has betrayed them in some fashion because of the birth that they had, or their experience of getting pregnant, or, you know, name it. But I've had women just really feel betrayed, and I just would, on every level, not just in their own experience, but their experience with their culture or society around their bodies. And I am fascinated. So keep going. Tell more.
What you're saying is so important, because we have these cultural overlays, we have these social overlays, we have religious overlays, we have our trauma histories, we have intergenerational trauma. All of that sets an imprint on how comfortable I am in my own skin and how available I am to inhabit all parts of me. So I went on this mission to support people in no matter what has happened to you or what has been told to you or whatever it is, how do I begin to feel more at home in my body? And it really got cemented in when I took the Sexological Bodywork training. It's a 3-month, super intensive, where I learned to touch people everywhere. I learned to receive touch everywhere. I learned to work with people with sexual dysfunction. I learned all about the nervous system and how it connected with sexuality. I learned a lot about working with very extreme situations like transgender and you know, a lot of sexual dysfunction, and it just changed my life. And I was doing it with a friend of mine, actually an old lover of mine. We were in this training together. He's a trauma abuse survivor, and he's very open about it. And we were sitting at Whole Foods during the breaks talking about, you know, we got to create something like this. How do we help people? I knew that I didn't want to become a professional sexuological bodywork. I don't want to be necessarily touching people's genitals, even though I wholeheartedly believe it. So I have a whole network, just like, you know, people that do pelvic floor work. It's very similar. So I understand the necessity of, but it wasn't something that either he or I wanted to do. So we created this program that is kind of the best of SE, sexological body work, and a lot of the very intense sexuality programs out there that will literally blow away trauma survivors. So it's called Full Embodiment, and we've been doing it pretty much full time since 2005. We have 4 levels for different people. One is for the public, meaning anybody can come. And it's very, because of my pre and perinatal training, it's very developmentally oriented. It's what kind of messages did you get about your gender when your mother was pregnant with you? Was she excited about a boy or a girl? If you were the opposite gender, what kind of imprint do you think that made on you? If you were a girl with girl genitals and your mother's going, I hope it's a boy, I hope it's a boy, I hope it's a boy. You know? And the whole, as we know, that discovery moment creates such an imprint.
It's true.
And it can really seriously, you know, challenge people's relationships to their body and their gender for the whole rest of their life. So we started with in utero experiences with new messages. So as you're in your mommy's tummy, what kind of messages did you want in order to feel fully welcomed, fully alive, fully okay in all of you? So we do these little exercises around that. Also, when you're born, how did you want to be welcomed? You know, when they saw that you, regardless of what was going on, what kind of messages did you want to receive about that moment of birth? When you started to explore your body and you found all these magic parts, what kind of messages did you want to hear as you found this, right? As you go through puberty, what did you want to hear about your body changing? And what kind of messages did you want to hear? And so it's very profound. This is the level 1 of the full embodiment. And it's deeply experiential. It's deeply reparative. And meanwhile, we're doing a ton of exercises on boundaries, on tracking every inch of oneself. We include the whole body. We never skip any parts. We have people walking around, you know, feeling their breasts and leading with their breasts, and men walking with their genitals out and just feeling what it's like to, you know, walk around a room and say, yeah, I have testicles, you know. And noticing how everybody else in the room freaks out when someone knows that there are testicles in the room. I mean, so all of this, it's both kind of normalizing and doing our own work and noticing where we, you know, where our own sort of holes are in our relationship to our body. So that's it. I mean, I can go on and tell you about the rest of the levels, but that's kind of core of where I'm working?
Well, before we go more into that, I mean, I'd like to link to what you're doing in the show notes so people can click and go and see. But in my listening to you, because it's called full embodiment, and embodiment is like sort of like why a lot we're here. We're here. We come as an energetic being into a body to feel the body and to connect to planet Earth and to collect to nature. I mean, that why else and be here to explore the sensuality and this of being in a body, and it is a really hard journey for a lot of people.
Hard journey.
And so, yeah, talk about that, because I also really try and help people feel more embodied, and this feels like a rich territory, or even a map, the map to a more difficult territory. What's the blueprint, according to you, around the sexuality, sensuality, and embodiment?
Yeah. So I look at, because I have the trauma awareness, trauma informed awareness, and using the SE model as my lens, I think about what do we need in order to help people be curious about their bodies, being invitational, right? Also recognizing, like what you're saying, is that I would say the majority of people do not have a good relationship with their body.
Yes. I would say yes.
Yeah. How many times have you asked, what do you notice in your body? And they look at you blankly.
Right.
They don't have a language for it. So when I'm working, what I've really discovered, and this isn't even part of the SE training, although I'm starting to integrate it, is that we really have to be as titrated as possible. And we have to get consent from people. When people have had sexual trauma, that's the number one thing that gets missed. And so someone will come in and they'll even say, I want to work on my sexual trauma. And I'll go, great, let's jump in. It's not that easy. I have to do whatever I can to support the part of them that wants to change. So it would be something like, I want to work on my sexual trauma, and I want to get very clear when someone says that, of where is the end point? Like, let's just say, cured your sexual trauma. Where do you want to be? Well, I want more closeness with my husband. I want to have better orgasms, or I want to have an orgasm, or I even want to learn to be sexual with my partner, right? So I have to start with where they are. And what I've discovered is that a lot of people, you actually need to support the sensation or the body as a place of pleasure from what we call in SE the periphery. So for example, I am not going to ask a trauma survivor, what do you notice in your body? I'm going to start with really basic, everyday, benign things like, what's it like for you when you feel the sun on your skin? Let's just take a moment and feel the sun. That is your skin feeling. And what kind of changes do you have? I don't say, what do you notice in your body? But what kind of changes or what kind of shifts happen when you just feel the sun on your skin? Next layer would be something like people who have pets. When your cat is lying on your chest, what is that like? Can you feel the weight of your pet? When your dog comes over and puts his head on your lap, what do you notice about that? And when your hand touches your pet, is that pleasurable? And if it's pleasurable, how do you know? What changes in you when you connect to your pet? When you're taking a shower, where are all the places that your body enjoys? And can you allow the shower water to feel all of you? So anyway, the point being is that I work with people for a very long time on just these everyday things that have nothing to do with sex, so that their body becomes a place of pleasure. They realize, wow, my body is an experiencer.
Yes.
Now, when I eat food, when I listen to music, when a smell, right? So I bring their awareness to all these really delicious things that are completely non-threatening. Yeah. Then the next piece is, if I say, well, what are you noticing in your body? Nothing. Then I'm not going to let that throw me at all. I'm going to say something like, is there a small part of you that would be curious on learning what's happening in your body? Right? There's the consent. A small part of you that might want to learn to be more friendly with your body. Is there a small part of you that even, when I'm working especially with gender identity and they hate their genitals, they hate who they are. The question is there a very, very small part of you that would like to learn just to become a little bit more comfortable with the body that you have now? It may not be the body that you have forever, but it's the one that you have now. So that in super titrated ways. And then I will go immediately into the pleasure. I'll say, like, what are the things that you do enjoy now in connection with your partner? So focusing on what works, focusing on the smallest amount of pleasure. Well, I like it when we hold hands and walk down the street. Okay, so let's just take a moment and notice that. And when that's pleasurable, how do you know? How do you know that there's something that's okay about that? And I might have to give them a menu because they don't know. And I might say, well, you feel more present. You take a deep breath. You're more connected to the ground. Maybe something opens in your chest a little bit. And then I sneak in while we're doing all of that. And just notice if you're feeling anything in your pelvis area or your lower body. Because I want to connect the pleasure with the areas of the body that are, offline. And so I'm constantly connecting it to all parts. And this is absolutely essential.
Well, how does one know if one's body is offline? What parts are offline? So if you were to help someone sort that out, what would you do?
Well, when I do my classes, it's actually kind of sneaky. We actually do a drawing of a gingerbread person. We can do this. I actually do this when I'm working one-on-one as well. But it's one of the first exercises we do is we do a little scan. I'll just say, okay, start with the top of your body and very slowly move your awareness down and, notice areas of tightness, notice areas of space, notice areas of pleasure, notice areas that might hold trauma, and notice areas that aren't there. Let's just be curious about that. So then after the scan, we'll draw a little outline of a gingerbread person, and I'll have them with different colors draw where are the areas of tension, where are the areas of space and strength, like where are the areas that are stable to you, that are reliable. And where are the areas that hold trauma or injury? Let's draw those, circle those. And then where are the areas that are absent, where you have no awareness, no sensation? Draw a circle around that. So then they have this picture and they can look at that and go, wow, I don't feel this part. I don't feel my throat. I don't feel my pelvis. And so we'll just look at that and we'll process that. It's like, what's it like? And is there, again, any small part of you that would like to be friendlier with those areas? Is there any part of you that would like to just touch into some of those scary places and make friends, integrate? Yeah, consent, curiosity, being welcoming. Because, as you probably know, the way that most people, and this is very cultural, the way that most people deal with sex is through avoidance. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to have sex, or they do it in a very dissociated way. Not present when they have sex. They kind of get it over with. Of course, that's not everybody, but that's the population that I work with. Most people go through avoidance. If I don't want to feel something, I'm not going to. And so then I'm going to keep asking those questions. Is there any small, tiny part of you that says, now I don't want it, but might there be a small part of you that would be curious at some point, right? Or to have more comfort in that part. And it's the same thing when I'm working with couples where I have one person, it's not always the woman who has decided they don't want to do sex anymore. It's just not interesting to them. The question I will ask is, I really hear what you're saying and I honor that choice. And I wonder if there's any small, tiny part of you that would be interested in finding ways of achieving more intimacy with your partner. And usually they say yes. So again, I'm not even touching the sex card. It's like the intimacy card. It's how do I learn to be really connecting with my partner? Maybe it's just that I sit side by side and I enjoy that my arm right here is touching my partner. And then connect the rest of my body and notice, is it okay? So it's kind of tedious because it's so slow. But the really extreme sexual abuse survivors respond in ways that it's gorgeous. And it brings tears because they're doing it at their pace. They're doing it because they want to. And that is what is taken away from a sexual abuse survivor.
Yes.
Their relationship. They're owning their body on their terms. And so I have to get the partner to agree. We all almost always start with a no sex rule. No sex for 2 months, 1 month. So they can play with these intimacy exercises without worrying that it's going to move somewhere. It's like, no, we're just touching hands right now. That's all. That's all.
Well, what a wonderful thing that you're doing for people, just helping them, inviting them into feeling their wholeness, their range of experiences, and to not be, to not let that part of them just sort of go into silence or not be accessed, because why else be embodied? I mean, sensuality, pleasure, sensation, sexuality are all parts, beautiful parts of being a human being. So it just feels very enriching on many levels, not just for, sexuality, but for sensuality and sensing and relationship, and not just with another human being either, but with the sun and with nature and with themselves. So
with our own bodies. And the thing again that ties us so much, Kate, is that what is our very first orientation? It's to other, right? Yeah. So that deeply hardwired into us. And so I want to support people in the natural inclination that they have to moving towards their partners or towards somebody with that. But trauma interrupts that.
It's true.
And underneath the trauma is still that wiring that I want closeness with my partner. And it's the fear and all those layers, all those imprints that get in the way. So we want to peel one of those away very gently, get through the layers, but keep accessing the part of them that I know deeply wants connection. It's just really messed with. So we keep coming back to that. Yeah, so can you feel the part of you that wants closeness with your partner, even though it's scary? Can you access? Yeah.
Well, there's probably a lot we can discuss about your trainings, but we're going to have to probably complete here for today. But I want to encourage people to go to your websites and go find out more about you. Can you just mention how they can do that, Arielle?
Sure. My website is fullembodiment.org. It's also my email if you want to email Arielle@fullembodiment.org. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I know you're not offering trainings just now because of this COVID, but people can find you all over the world, you said, so that you'll be offering trainings and information, and they can find you through the Somatic Experiencing Institute as well.
Healing.com is another link. And the other thing that has happened recently is I did a couple of webinars for SAND, Science and Non-Duality.
Yeah, and I saw that.
Those are also available on my website. You can get the link. They're not expensive, and it's like 5 hours of me talking about this stuff. So even though I'm not doing anything live, there's still information out there.
Mm-hmm. I can find that too and put it in the show notes. So what was the other website besides fullembodiment.org? It was something
That was
heal.
just my email.
Oh, okay.
Saying, trauma healing.
Yeah, trauma healing. Yeah, SETI. Okay. And there's your little bird there. I see it. Okay, so well, thank you for coming and telling us all about this beautiful work. It feels like it does make a more beautiful life, truly. So, Arielle, what makes your life more beautiful?
Well, my birds, connecting with people deeply, healing their early imprints, supporting them, finding their true authentic self. And other than that, my friends, movement, dance, vacations in foreign wild lands, and insects.
Yeah, well, a more beautiful life is a more pleasurable life, that's for sure. So thanks for coming on the show today, and to be continued. We'll have another one maybe in a while.
It's been so fun.
You've been listening to A More Beautiful Life podcast. To support our show, please go to Patreon /A More Beautiful Life.